Hi, this is Roger in Finland, and today we're taking a look at the Olympus 17mm f1.8 for Micro Four Thirds. And for the impatient ones, this is a great small 35mm equivalent in terms of field of view. It performs well, it autofocuses well, and it's great for manual focusing. And going into some more details, first of all, this episode is shot with the gear that I'm reviewing. So this is the 17mm f1.8 at f1.8, and right now it's mounted onto an Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II. The aperture is at f1.8. I'm shooting OM log 400, ISO at 400, 4K, 25p, and 1/50 in shutter. The autofocus now will work pretty well. This is the second time I'm making this video because I'm quite new to this camera and I did something wrong, so I have a full video with the focus on my shoulder and not on my face. User error, the camera is great, the lens is great. So this is a lens that I had a long time ago when I started to get into the Micro Four Thirds system. I loved it very, very much, but when I went out of the system, I sold it with everything else. Now that I am back into Micro Four Thirds, I've been waiting to find a good second-hand deal. It finally appeared, and then I decided to pull the trigger, and I'm very happy because as much as I remember loving the lens some years ago, I still do. It's a focal length that I like very, very much, and in general I am most comfortable with anything that in terms of equivalence in field of view to full frame, it's somewhere between 30 and 50. That means that in Micro Four Thirds lenses is somewhere between 15 and 25. So this 17 fits just there, right in the between, and I just like it very much. And the equivalence of this particular lens, which is 34mm, almost 35, that's a pretty classical focal length. And right now it's become pretty much my favorite lens in Micro Four Thirds world for these kind of YouTube videos. Besides having a focal length that I like very, very much, an aperture which is more than decent, the size and the price, there's one ergonomic functionality that I like so much from this lens, and that's the focus clutch. Olympus has this focus clutch in some other lenses as well. I think that all of their Pro primes have it. At least the 12 to 40 f2.8 zoom lens also has it. And then from the, let's say, more affordable primes, the 12 f2 has the focus clutch, the 17 f1.8 has the focus clutch, but the 25 and the 45, both of them f1.8, do not have the focus clutch. I think it would be great to have the series of the smaller, more compact, less fast, but still really good primes, that all of them would have this focus clutch because it's so cool. So what it does is basically enables manual focusing by pulling that clutch, but not only that, it enables manual focusing in a mechanical mode. Most lenses for Micro Four Thirds and other mirrorless systems do focus by wire, and that means, in my opinion, that they are not very good for manual focusing, and sometimes that's useful or necessary. With this focus clutch, you get a fully mechanical manual focusing with hard stops, and it works just great. Another cool thing that can be done with this focus clutch is rack focusing by using the clutch, and that's done basically by setting the manual focus distance wherever you want. Once you put the clutch back, then the camera will operate in normal autofocus, but as soon as you pull the clutch, then the focus will rack focus to whatever distance you had set the last time that you used the focus clutch. And I think that's really useful. It might be a little bit too fast or jarring for a rack focus in general for some people, but I think it's still cool that it works this way. Then how about the optical performance? Well, let me give you two answers. First, let's do a semi-proper review, like I would be a semi-proper reviewer, which I'm not, but let's go. It's sharp, especially in the center. It gets sharper when you stop it down. It does have 9 elements in 6 groups. The chromatic aberrations do exist, but they are fairly controlled and can be controlled afterwards or corrected afterwards, and the bokeh is quite pleasant. And I think that what I just said can be said pretty much from any modern prime lens. Most of them are sharp enough. Most of them are more sharp in the center. Most of them get sharper when you stop down. Those elements in groups, unless you are an optical designer, I don't think that tells anything to anyone. Chromatic aberrations, they do exist, they are controllable, and there's tools to do that. And it's true that the really extreme lenses that open really, really wide, they might suffer more from it, but they're usually more expensive and have some pieces of glass that help on that. But anyway, and the bokeh is anyway a personal choice. So my take on it is that I like the focal length very, very much. This aperture allows me to have some separation between the subject and the background. Not too much here, but that background is pretty close to me, so but it's still possible. When it comes to light gathering, it means that you can shoot with lower ISOs and higher shutter speed when taking pictures, which is good. And it's definitely more than sharp enough for my needs. So there you go. And that's the thing. When I'm looking at lenses, I look at the focal length. That's to me the single most important thing when looking at a prime. Focal length is a matter of preference. Some people prefer wide angle, some people prefer longer lenses, or different people in the different situations. As I said, I feel comfortable in the range where this sits in. So that's the primary criteria. Then we have what is the maximum aperture, which is going to be helping on having more control on the shallowness of the depth of field, and also how much light does it gather. Again, shooting higher shutter speeds and lower ISOs. Then the size and weight and the price. And that's the thing, the relationship between these elements is that usually having a bigger maximum aperture means that the lens is also bigger in size and weight, and it's also a lot more expensive. Then in addition to that, you have some other features which might be ergonomical, let's say it this way, or just pure features. Some lenses have autofocus and some don't, and that's still totally okay because there's many people that for video prefer to have manual focus. Then features like this one, the focus clutch, makes it much better at using manual focus for video than any focus by wire lens. Then you have lenses that are stabilized. Again, thinking about Micro Four Thirds and specifically this camera, the M1 Mark II, the Mark III, it's even better. The Panasonic G9, they have great in-body image stabilization, which means that the lens stabilization is not so necessary. And that's about it. So now, using this criteria, let's compare this Olympus 17mm f1.8 with the competition. And here I picked a few lenses which are exactly 17mm, but then they do have different apertures and then some other characteristics. But let me take my notes. Here I'm going to be talking about the Olympus f2.8, the Olympus 1.8, which is the subject of the review for today, the Olympus 1.2 Pro, then the Voigtlander 0.95, and the Laowa 1.8, which I do own also, and I have a review. I will post the link up here and down below. But as you can see, if we go from the slowest one, is the f2.8. It's the lightest one at 71 grams. It's the smallest one. It's actually a pancake lens. It's just 2 centimeters long, and that might include the cap actually. And it's fairly affordable, so new goes for 250 euros, but it's not the cheapest. Then we jump to the 1.8, so that's the Olympus that we talked today, and then the Laowa. Those two are a little bit bigger, especially the Laowa, that goes up to 5 centimeters long. This Olympus is only 3.5 centimeters long. It's still a very, very compact lens. They are a bit heavier than the 2.8. The Olympus is 120 grams, and the Laowa 172, and that's mostly due to the excellent construction of the Laowa lenses, and they are all metal, but that's a huge price difference. The Olympus goes new for 400 euros, and the Laowa goes for 180, which is even cheaper than the Olympus 2.8. Here, the problem or the feature that the Laowa lacks is that it's manual focus only. Then we go to the heavy, very fast, and very expensive, the Olympus f1.2 Pro, which also has a focus clutch that's much, much bigger. It's pretty much 3 times as big as this f1.8. It's 3 times as heavy, so it weighs almost 400 grams, and the price new is above 1,000 euros. I've seen it on offer for about 1,000, and many times the price goes up to 1,300 euros. So 3 times the price, 3 times the size, 3 times the weight. It does have larger aperture, so from 1.8 to f1.2, but at least to me that doesn't justify the price difference. Or let's say this way, maybe it justifies the price difference, but I can't justify to myself to pay that much and carry that much weight for what I would gain. Again, it's a matter of preference and a matter of use cases. And finally, the Voigtlander, that's f0.95, which makes it kind of a specialty definitely a different kind of lens, and the price is 900 euros, so more than double of this one. It's all manual, it's all metal, it's as big as the Olympus f1.2, and it's even heavier. It's more than half a kilo. But those Voigtlanders are special. I had the 42.5 f0.95, and they are just brilliant. They have something special. So if you want something special and you don't need the autofocus, maybe go and get it. For me, this Olympus f1.8, it has that a really sweet spot of, it's great for autofocus, it's great for manual focus, it's still fairly fast, it's still fairly small, and if you find a good deal secondhand, then it's a no-brainer. If the autofocus has nothing for you and you don't need it and you don't use it ever, then I would take a look at the Laowa, because then you get also f1.8, you have a similar size, a similar weight, much cheaper price, but what you don't get is the autofocus. And that's probably why I have those two lenses. As I said, I feel that most modern lenses are definitely more than sharp enough for me. If you're a professional, and maybe a professional pixel clipper, you might need more, but for most of us, this is definitely more than good enough. And I would guess that the f2.8 is actually also good enough in terms of sharpness and performance, but probably we would definitely lose on blurry backgroundness, if that's a thing. So I'm curious, if I find one of them dirt cheap secondhand, I might get it, just because I love the focal length, just to test it out. But otherwise, I'm gonna stick with this Olympus f1.8, which is a great lens, and I'm still gonna keep the Laowa because it's very fun. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and we're gonna see you soon for some more content.